6 keys to be considered a luxury instead of a simple option. Stoicism. You spend too much energy trying to be remembered where you were never truly valued. You live explaining yourself, begging for respect, giving up your principles, enduring dramas that only destroy your internal structure. And in the end, you go home with the same invisible shame as always. Today, this ends. This video is an ultimatum against your self-sabotage. Here you'll understand how to preserve your energy, establish non-negotiable boundaries, silence yourself to become impossible to ignore, master your emotions, and leave without a fuss any place that belittles you. But pay attention. Watching this without committing is repeating the cycle of running away. Like and subscribe now as a pact with your new identity. And write in the comments, "I am ready," because continuing to live this way is no longer an option. The biggest prison has no visible walls or bars. It dwells deep within the conditioned mind, where you learned to believe that love must be bought with effort, that respect is begged for in silence, that acceptance is conquered at any price. Personal transformation only begins when that lie is torn from within, when you face the self-sabotage that makes you emotionally grovel before someone who never deserved your devotion. Write this: I will no longer beg for what should come naturally. This is the first door to a new identity, where character is not a bargaining chip, it is an unnegotiable foundation. The reprogramming of habits doesn't happen in books or theories. It is born in moments of firm decision, when you choose not to answer a call that only brings pain, when you block someone who has already crossed all boundaries, when you get up from a table where respect has died. Each of these acts is a brick in an internal structure that the world can no longer tear down. Applied faith is believing that God elevates you higher with every step you take toward your own worth, even if it means walking alone for a while. Inner growth hurts because it kills illusions. It exposes the invisible shame of having allowed yourself to be belittled for so long, of having postponed your own life, waiting for recognition that would never come. But it is this pain that heals, that strengthens self-esteem, that transforms routine into a path of daily overcoming. Emotional discipline is the muscle that supports this new version of yourself, capable of looking back without regret and forward without fear. Overcoming toxic habits is more than cutting off people or situations. It's cutting the mindset that kept you tied to them. It's breaking with the idea that you need to prove something to exist. Write this: my worth doesn't need an audience. This phrase is a shield against any invitation to return to the old pattern. The emotional clarity born from this is so powerful that it changes your posture, your voice, your silence, and even the way you walk through places that used to consume you. This is the secret foundation of reconstruction: to stop begging for worth, to start walking with an internal purpose, daily action, self-discipline, and a strong identity so as not to get lost again. After this, every boundary you set, every silence you choose, every withdrawal you make will be just proof that you have finally understood who you were born to be. Now, let's look at the 6 keys for change. 1. Your energy is not free. Stop offering yourself where there is no reciprocity, and you will see your worth increase. If you are still spending your energy trying to prove your own worth where there is no reciprocity, you are betraying your own identity. Every time you insist on staying where you are not respected, you feed a conditioned mind that confuses attention with love and presence with real commitment. Personal transformation begins when you understand that your energy is a sacred resource, as precious as the air you breathe. It is not negotiable. It is not disposable. It is not a cheap coin to buy crumbs of affection or validation. Write this: whoever doesn't recognize my worth doesn't deserve my devotion. This phrase is a hammer against self-sabotage. It breaks the pattern of begging for attention and calls you to a firm decision, to shield your own dignity as if it were your last chance for emotional salvation. The conditioned mind made you believe that to love is to insist, that kindness is never saying no, that patience is tolerating emotional abuse disguised as a connection. But emotional discipline is born at the point where you decide to stop offering yourself to those who only know how to consume your light without giving anything back. Habit reprogramming begins with the choice to distance yourself from people and environments that exhaust your mental strength. When you cut this toxic cycle, self-esteem is strengthened, emotional clarity expands, and your character begins to be rebuilt piece by piece. Repeat this. I will not beg for a place where my presence is ignored. The daily action of saying no to disrespect is an act of applied faith, a sign that you believe in the internal purpose that God has placed within you. Understand, every drop of your energy is like a seed that can bear fruits of inner growth or repeated frustration. When you waste your light in places where there is no reciprocity, it is not kindness, it is slow self-destruction. This is called negative habits disguised as virtue. From the moment you decide to protect your energy, you initiate a process of invisible overcoming, a surgical cut to the old pattern of lack that kept you tied to pain. This is where the internal structure of an unnegotiable human being is born, one who refuses to be an option of convenience. Personal transformation requires the courage to disappoint those who got used to using you. In this discomfort, a strong and unbreakable identity is forged. Whoever respects your energy is someone who doesn't ask you for more than they offer. It is someone who remains present without needing to be reminded. It is someone who understands that relationships are two-way streets, not a toll booth where only you pay the bill. Zeno of Citium, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca all taught us that the worth of a man or woman lies in who they are, not in how much they sacrifice to be accepted. Emotional self-discipline is the filter that separates real connections from parasitic illusions. Firm decision. Stop negotiating your peace. From today on, your energy will only be invested where there is real commitment, true reciprocity, and deep respect. This is the first brick of reconstruction, closing the taps where your vitality escapes without return. Because without preserved energy, there is no emotional clarity, no applied faith, no possible overcoming. Now that you have understood that you should not beg for worth, it's time to build an invisible and unbreakable wall. Clear boundaries, so that respect no longer depends on luck, but on the strength of your presence. 2. Clear boundaries, automatic respect. Nobody appreciates what they can trample on without consequence. The world tests your boundaries all the time, and if you don't define them, someone will define them for you. When there is no visible outline around your dignity, anyone feels authorized to cross it, hurt you, demand from you, manipulate you. Personal transformation doesn't happen only within the mind. It materializes when your posture becomes a closed door to emotional invasion. A mind conditioned to let it slide is an open door to toxic habits. The reprogramming of habits must begin with a firm decision. No one crosses the territory of my peace without permission. Write this, feel it, live it. Boundaries are not walls of isolation. They are fences protecting your internal structure. When you stay silent in the face of disrespect, you teach the other person that your pain has no price, that your presence is disposable, that your self-esteem is negotiable. Emotional self-discipline is the line that separates healthy tolerance from silent submission. A strong character is not afraid of losing someone who never knew how to value their company. Applied faith is believing that saying no can be more loving than allowing subtle abuse to continue. The emotional clarity born from boundaries is the foundation for a transformative routine, where every relationship is filtered by mutual respect. The absence of boundaries is the seed of self-sabotage. You allow yourself to be interrupted, belittled, exploited, and you call it kindness or patience. This invisible shame of taking a stand is an emotional addiction that needs to be broken. The firm decision to set clear boundaries is a choice of overcoming, an act of inner strength that cuts old patterns at their root. There is no inner growth without the pain of disappointing people accustomed to taking advantage of your silence. Write this: whoever doesn't respect my boundaries doesn't respect my soul. A boundary stated with calmness and firmness is worth more than 1,000 justifications. The silence of one who accepts everything is interpreted as weakness by minds conditioned to gain an advantage. That's why discipline is not just waking up early, working hard, or overcoming procrastination. It's also holding your own word when you say, enough. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca showed that true power is not allowing others to direct your spirit. Clear boundaries are invisible shields that transform the way the world treats you, because they teach that your self-respect is not for sale. Whoever learns to protect themselves without yelling, without begging, without falling into drama, begins to radiate a rare worth. Others perceive that there is a line that cannot be crossed, that there are consequences for disrespect. This is the second step of reconstruction, raising conscious barriers that uphold your strong identity. Because after you understand the weight of your own dignity, it's time to prove that you don't need words to be noticed. The silence of the wise will speak for you. 3. The silence of the wise. Speaking less and acting more makes you impossible to ignore. Silence is an underestimated power in an era where everyone is shouting to be heard. When you reduce your words and increase your actions, you create a magnetic force that is impossible to ignore. The conditioned mind believes that endless explanations buy respect, that justifying every step is the only way to be accepted. But personal transformation occurs when you realize that true worth is not said, it is shown. Write this: he who needs to talk too much is because he has not yet built his own presence. Strategic silence is the reprogramming of emotional habits that frees you from the addiction of begging for attention. Whoever masters silence develops an almost sacred emotional discipline, not responding to provocations, not entering into drama games, not justifying yourself to someone who has already decided to misunderstand you. This is pure mental strength. Every time you choose to be quiet and act, you strengthen the internal structure that supports your strong identity. The daily action of avoiding useless arguments is a self-mastery training, another brick in the construction of emotional clarity. Applied faith is expressed here, trusting that God opens doors for those who walk uprightly, not for those who waste energy trying to explain themselves to closed hearts. Silence is not the absence of a voice, it is conscious presence. It weighs more than any argument when it is accompanied by a firm character and a real commitment to your principles. Overcoming toxic habits begins when you understand that proving something to others is a shortcut to self-sabotage. The one who speaks less and lives more creates such a strong contrast with noisy mediocrity that they become impossible to ignore. Repeat this: my energy is for living, not for convincing. History shows that great sages, from Zeno of Citium to Seneca, were remembered not only for what they said, but for what they embodied in silence. Their words were rare because their actions were immense. This is the difference between someone who seeks validation and someone who emanates natural authority. The self-discipline of choosing silence is an exercise in inner strength, an act of inner growth that elevates emotional health and purifies internal purpose. Well-used silence transforms any space effortlessly. This is the third step of reconstruction, transforming every gesture into a manifesto, every silence into a cry of authenticity. Because after learning to preserve energy and set clear boundaries, the time comes to elevate your presence to a level where it is not necessary to compete for attention. And when you become that silent fortress, the next step is to master something even deeper: emotional self-control, so that nothing external has power over your internal peace. 4. Emotional self-control. He who is not carried away by drama becomes a rare and valuable refuge. The world is full of emotionally unstable people, ready to explode, to get lost in dramas, to drag everyone around them into their own chaos. The conditioned mind got used to reacting without thinking, to letting rage, anxiety, or lack decide for it. Personal transformation demands the opposite, learning to hold the rudder when the storm arrives, to breathe deeply when the impulse tells you to attack or beg. Write this: he who masters himself will never be dominated by anyone. Emotional self-discipline is a shield and a sword at the same time. It is the art of protecting your peace and dignity from the turbulence of others. The reprogramming of emotional habits begins with the simple act of not reacting immediately. He who responds in the heat of the moment feeds toxic habits that destroy relationships, reputation, and emotional health. Firm decision: stop being a slave to the moods of others. Daily action: count to 10. Pray. Breathe. Leave the scene if necessary. But don't surrender your mental strength to the first person who tries to provoke you. This is a work of inner growth that requires practice, failures, falls, but each victory strengthens your strong identity. Repeat this: I will not lose myself just because someone wants to see me fall apart. He who conquers self-control becomes a rare refuge. In a noisy world, where every small conflict becomes a war, finding someone who maintains emotional clarity is like finding water in the desert. This inner strength attracts genuine respect, because it is impossible not to admire someone who remains whole when everything around them is fragmented. Marcus Aurelius taught us that the mind is invincible when it chooses not to be contaminated by external chaos. Self-discipline is the art of building an internal temple, where no one, except God, has access to your decisions. Drama is a poison that silently destroys the transformative routine you are trying to build. Every outburst, every word said without thinking, every tear shed to convince someone moves you away from the internal purpose that should guide your choices. Self-control is a daily construction, brick by brick, sustained by applied faith and a real commitment to yourself. He who masters his own emotions is not cold. He is wise. He knows where to shed tears, where to spend smiles, where to spend silence. This is the fourth step of reconstruction, being the rock in the middle of the tides, being the calm when the world tries to drag you into chaos. Because after learning to preserve energy, impose boundaries, use silence, and master emotions, it's time to raise the definitive internal wall, non-negotiable principles, the foundation that makes it impossible for someone to treat you as a disposable option. 5. Non-negotiable principles. Firmness in your values separates you from the crowd. All solid personal transformation is born from an unshakable foundation. Principles that do not change based on convenience or the fear of rejection. The conditioned mind got used to being flexible in its values to please, to give in so as not to lose company, to negotiate its own dignity to keep doors open that only lead to self-sabotage. But the reprogramming of habits requires the courage to say no, where everyone else sells out for cheap. Write this: my character is not for sale. The firm decision to uphold clear values is what separates mediocrity from genuine respect, the illusion of acceptance from true personal honor. A principle is like an anchor. Without it, you are dragged by the currents of every external opinion, of every fleeting emotion, of every dubious opportunity. Self-discipline is the rope that keeps that anchor firm, even when the social or emotional storm tries to pull you away from what you believe. Applied faith is trusting that God never blesses a path that requires you to deny who you are. Emotional clarity is born from this solid foundation. When your principles are non-negotiable, you don't waste time on paths that hurt your active conscience. Every time you negotiate an essential value, you open a crack in your own internal structure. Small concessions become negative habits, and each habit destroys a piece of your self-esteem. Overcoming does not happen without pain. And that pain is the pain of upholding a no, even when the temptation to give in seems easier. Write this: I will not lose my soul to gain temporary approval. Inner growth demands this firmness, because without it, the strong identity is never consolidated, and the invisible shame of having sold yourself corrodes you from within. The great names of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, lived and died for principles, not for convenience. This is the mark of an unbreakable character. Daily action aligned with values so profound that neither fear, nor desire, nor external pressure is capable of bending them. When your principles are your compass, every choice becomes simple. Every firm decision flows naturally, because you already know who you are and what you will never allow yourself to lose. This is the fifth step of reconstruction: to raise within yourself an internal law that no one can revoke, a code of honor that guides your transformative routine. Because after learning to preserve energy, impose boundaries, use silence, and master emotions, there is only one final step: strategic withdrawal, the art of walking away without a fuss, forcing the world to feel the void of your absence. 6. Strategic withdrawal. When you learn to leave without a fuss, others learn not to lose you. There are battles that are not won by speaking louder or trying to convince someone who has already decided to underestimate you. Personal transformation reaches a point where the greatest demonstration of strength is not staying, it is leaving. The conditioned mind clings to the fear of loneliness, the need to prove something, the illusion that insisting buys respect. But the firm decision to leave, without yelling, without drama, without endless explanations, is the most profound act of self-control and emotional clarity a human being can have. Write this: the silence of my departure weighs more than any word said. When you learn to withdraw without looking back, you leave a trail of inevitable respect, because only someone who knows their own worth has the courage to be absent without asking permission. Strategic withdrawal is not flight. It is a conscious choice. It is a surgical cut to the toxic habits that drain your mental strength and corrode your internal purpose. Self-discipline teaches you to recognize when presence has become a handout, when company has become a favor, when dignity is being exchanged for crumbs of attention. At that moment, the daily action is simple. Turn your back, take your peace with you, and let the absence speak for itself. This gesture is not revenge. It is the overcoming of self-sabotage patterns that for years kept you tied to the invisible shame of not feeling enough. It is the act of rebuilding your internal structure, closing doors that only lead to pain, and opening space for inner growth to flourish without barriers. He who learns to leave without a fuss creates a strong identity, because he proves to himself that he doesn't need an audience to validate his own courage. Applied faith is manifested here, trusting that God does not keep anyone in places where respect has died. This silent exit is also a testimony of emotional discipline, living proof that your inner strength no longer depends on external approval. The transformative routine that supports your new life requires a clean space, true connections, environments where reciprocity is law. Every strategic withdrawal is an act of self-love, a decree that establishes new standards for all future relationships. The great sages of Stoicism taught that there is no freedom without detachment. Zeno, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, all showed that the worth of a man resides in the ability to walk alone when company costs the soul. The inner strength to withdraw is the same strength that builds a future where you never again accept being a disposable option. This firm decision is a turning point. Those who did not know how to value you learn through the pain of the void, and you learn through the emotional clarity that is born when you choose yourself without guilt. Repeat this: my departure is the lesson that will never be forgotten. This is the final step of reconstruction, learning to say goodbye without a fuss, to let absence show what presence could not teach. After preserving your energy, imposing boundaries, using silence, mastering emotions, and upholding your principles, strategic withdrawal seals the new identity you have built. From here on, you are no longer someone who begs for worth, but someone who teaches, with their own life, the price of losing someone who learned to honor themselves. Overcoming is complete when the world understands that your presence is a privilege, and that your absence is the eternal memory of what they should never have let go. He who does not protect his energy, who does not set boundaries, who does not master his emotions, who does not know how to leave, will always be a disposable option. Living this way is an invitation to the world to trample on you, to repeat the cycle of pain and invisible shame that has already cost you years. The reconstruction of your identity is not a promise. It is a firm decision, daily action, a definitive break with self-sabotage. Life will not deliver respect to someone who begs for crumbs, but bows before someone who stands up and becomes unnegotiable. Look around you. How many times have you traded your peace for presence, your dignity for attention, your character for company? This has to end today. Write in the comments, "I am ready to seal your choice," so that every step from here on carries an internal purpose, mental strength, and unbreakable emotional discipline. Like this video as an act of commitment to your new identity. Subscribe so you don't miss any other messages that strengthen who you were born to be. The next video is on the screen, and it is the inevitable continuation of this rebirth. Break today, or repeat tomorrow.